Hi class, this is Dr. Reyes-Fournier, and welcome to Week 2 and Module 2. This week we're going to be interpreting statistical assessments and introduction to psychological report writing. Before we even get into this, let's get into some of the very basics of creating an assessment so you understand why it is that we need to interpret things and how we understand assessment and how we use them in diagnostics and things like that. So let's start with the most basic unit of understanding in psychology, which is the psychological construct. First of all, some of the things that we're talking about. So for example, things like intelligence or self-esteem or happiness or depression are ideas. Okay, these are not necessarily tangible things. When we look at, for example, what it's saying here on this page, things like, your sex, age, height, weight, and birth order, all of those are very straightforward, very tangible, very, we know that this is true because you weigh this much, because we use this on this scale, right? So, like weight, we have to construct this idea. So we see somebody who's like super, super sad and it's not going away. So someone goes, hey, that looks like someone has a depressed mood. And then they start developing what that means. It's a definition. It's a very specific definition. When we develop assessments, there is a long process of trying to define this idea of depression or intelligence. So when we say things like, their intelligence is this is not set in stone. This is not something that you can say, if somebody else tests this person, they're going to get the exact number. Because one, different intelligence tests are constructed differently. There's a lot of similarity, but they're not exactly the same. And things like, for example, personality, is not based on anything concrete, right? It's not like a table that you could smack. It's this idea of this amalgam, or this, many different ways of being that construct somebody's personality. So the construct is trying to specifically define an idea. Okay, that we have this idea that human beings have this thing called intelligence, and we're going to define it in some way. So, psychological construct, we start with that. Then we develop questions or items to get at what these ideas are, like the specific definition of this idea. And when we get that all together, we have an assessment, and then we have to do a lot of statistics to see if the test is reliable. So what does reliability mean? Now, a test must have reliability and validity. Those aren't two things, actually. There are many things under this concept. So reliability means that if someone takes the test on Monday, if they take the same exact test on Tuesday, they should be getting a similar score. So that test is reliable. If, for example, when I score that test that you take on Monday, and you take it again on Tuesday, and I score it differently, that needs to be reliable. So in other words, the scoring needs to be reliable. The performance on the test needs to be reliable. So it needs to be similar both days. I need to be able to score it the same way both days. And if you have different forms of the same test, so like for example, if there's an A and a B, let's say, to the same test, is it scored the same way both times? Okay, so that's reliability. Then we also need to understand validity. Does this test actually measure intelligence, or whatever construct it says that it's measuring. So validity, there's, the construct validity, which means that it actually measures this is a depression assessment, and it actually measures depression, not anxiety. Okay? It also needs to have face validity. So is it actually asking you questions about depression that look like questions like depression? Not like, what do you like doing on Saturdays? That's too vague and not really appropriate for that kind of assessment. So does it have face validity? Does it have a construct validity? And so when we get these together, let's say that something has a construct validity and face validity and has good reliability, then we start giving it to the masses to see if we could start standardizing it to the norm. Okay? And in different places, you're going to get different responses, right? So let's say if we decide to take this test elsewhere, like to a different country, do they express their depression the same way Americans do? That's a question that we have to ask. So for example, some of our assessments, where's that big list of assessments? Oh, I don't have it up, do I? Oh, wait, here it is. This big list of assessments, these are basically all the kinds of assessments you can take. But for example, here's the intelligence test, I'm looking for a specific test that I'm not seeing here, but let's go personality test. One of the most used personality tests in the world is the MMPI. And of course it's not in here, so of course I feel bad now. But the MMPI is standardized and has been standardized in the entire world. So it's in multiple languages. It has incredible validity all over the world. So one of those tests, the amount of research that they do on the MMPI is amazing. And that test has been around for 50, 60 years, I think. Okay, so based on all that, let's move to something fun for you guys to do at your leisure. You don't have to do it anytime soon. To understand this idea of construct, to understand this idea of assessment and scoring, I want you to take one of these. This is from the University of Pennsylvania's Positive Psychology Center. This is really the birthplace of positive psychology. This is where Dr. Martin Seligman teaches. And they have for you to take all these different kinds of assessments on happiness, on compassion, on strengths, on grit, on their concept, on their construct of PERMA, which is basically the things that you need to have a good life, a flourishing life, as they say. Flourishing, another construct that they created. So have fun with this, and I'm gonna have this link so that you can take one of these and see how you're doing. And you'll see that they actually score it for you, and they explain the scoring in terms of graphs as well. So, talking about scoring a test. This is the Meaning in Life questionnaire that I showed you during my video for week 1. In the Meaning of Life questionnaire, which is simply 10 items, that you need to respond on this Likert scale. A Likert scale is not a test. A Likert scale is a way of allowing the individual taking the assessment to give you a more precise answer, right? So I could ask you a question that's yes or no, but how many questions do you really know that are yes or no? So things like, are you hungry? Yes or no? Well, I could eat, maybe. A snack would be nice, right? It's not just yes or no. Maybe if you've just eaten, then yeah, the answer is no, I'm not hungry at all, right? So that's an absolutely untrue that I am hungry. But let's say that you haven't eaten since yesterday. Oh, absolutely true. I am really hungry right now. If you ate a few hours ago, see that there is a scale to actually answer it more specifically. And this is why Likert scales are used so often in assessment. It is to get a better indication of where you lie on that. So based on this and your scoring, look at, they give you the little legend down here, and it tells you that item 9 is reverse scored. So on this one, so for example, it says to score it by the numbers, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So let's say that I understand my life's meaning, and I give it a 6, right? If I give my life has no purpose a 6, how do I score that? I score that oppositely. So if that's a 6, mostly true, that isn't a positive thing. So you reverse that score. So, which means that you subtract instead of that. So in this case, you score all of this together. You have 2 scales, and then you would have a scale for each one, and you could actually take it back here to this, and it explains to you that if you have X amount of meaning, presence of meaning, it means this. If you have X amount of search for meaning, it means that. So the same thing that's going to happen with your authentic happiness questionnaires. They are going to have very specific approaches to these things where they're going to explain, how it is scored for you. All right. So any questions on any of this, please email me. If I miss a question on like if you would do the ask the teacher thing, I might miss that because since we're not doing discussions, I don't always look at that, but I do check my email several times a day. So email is probably the best way of getting a hold of me. I look forward to your emails and to reading your work, and I'll talk to you guys soon. Bye-bye.